And my constituents are furious that you've surrendered on freedom of movement and on rule-taking under the ECJ. But there is good news, Mr. Prime Minister. Do you accept that you've also surrendered the jobs of many of your backbench MPs in the next general election to reform?
Your name wasn't on this letter. What are your thoughts in regard to its sentiments, Jonathan?
I agree with them.
You agree with them? Are you going to rebel?
I do. I'll be very clear. When these cuts were announced, I spoke locally with my party and said I couldn't envisage myself voting for those cuts. I think we've got to be, and I don't intend to, I should say, very clear.
Britain has just experienced a political shockwave, the kind no one saw coming. What once seemed impossible is now unfolding before our eyes. Labour's hold is slipping and Starmer finds himself at the heart of the storm. It all began in Runcorn and Helsby, where Reform UK pulled off a jaw-dropping upset. They snatched a seat Labour had held for years, and they did it by just 6 votes, the narrowest win in British electoral history. But this wasn't just about one seat changing hands. It's a crack in the system, and it could be just the beginning. Before we begin, I'd like to ask you for a small favour. If you enjoy our content, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. It only takes a second, but it makes a huge difference in helping us grow and bring you even better content. Thank you. And now, let's get started.
Just to be clear, Jonathan, I haven't heard this before. You're saying that you're going to vote against the government. Is that the first time that you will have rebelled?
Yes. And I think it's really important to be clear about this. So much of what is in that green paper is absolutely right. We have to reduce the benefit bill in this country. We have to get people back into work. Work is absolutely the right place for people to be. And I think we've gone through a generation where the benefit bill has skyrocketed. But cutting support for disabled people doesn't solve that problem. That is about balancing the books. That's about making the numbers stack up for fiscal rules and everything else. I have spoken to countless people in Hartlepool, people who actually are in work but rely on PIP in order to support them to do it, who are going to lose under this system.
The mood quickly shifted from shock to full-blown chaos. Starmer, already under fire for losing touch with Labour's working-class roots, was now facing open rebellion. Disillusioned, MPs started jumping ship to Reform UK, no longer willing to stay in a party they believe has turned its back on the very people it once vowed to stand up for. These defections weren't just political gestures, they were the first real signs of a bigger exodus. Years of welfare cuts, broken promises, and polished doublespeak have left many feeling angry and betrayed. The foundation Labour once stood so firmly on is beginning to crack. Long-time supporters are walking away. Fringe voices are turning into mainstream movements. And for the first time in decades, Labour is facing a genuine threat from a rising third party. This isn't just Star's crisis. It's the start of a reckoning.
Who should work and could work and don't want to work, and that's also a massive problem that we have to solve. But simply piling on pain to those in desperate need is not a way to solve anything. The impact assessment released by this government said that it would push 250,000 people into poverty, including 50,000 children. I did not get into politics to do that. So absolutely the sentiment of that green paper about getting people back into work is right. Getting people off benefits is right. But simply cutting support for people who are disabled is not the way to achieve it. I would argue it probably makes it less likely that some of those people will get into work.
Reform UK, once brushed off as just another protest party, is now striking a real chord with voters who feel ignored by both Labour and the Conservatives. Every time they win a by-election, or Nigel Farage grabs headlines with a fiery soundbite, more people are paying attention. They're pulling support from all sides. Former Labour voters who feel betrayed, disillusioned Tories, and a growing number of people in the middle who are just fed up with the whole system. Reform UK's message doesn't try to be pretty or polished. It's blunt, sometimes even abrasive. But that's exactly why it's resonating. It sounds real. In a time when trust in politicians is scraping the bottom, that kind of raw honesty is hitting home in a way. Carefully crafted manifestos just don't. Reform UK isn't just talking policy. They're tapping into how people feel, frustrated, forgotten, angry, and inside Labour. The cracks are widening. MPs are jumping ship. The backbenchers are getting restless. And even some party veterans are starting to question whether Starmer has what it takes to hold things together. What started as quiet discontent is now a full-blown rebellion. Every defection to Reform UK is more than just a political move. It's a warning sign, one that says Labour might not just be struggling, it might be spiralling.
So just to be clear, Jonathan Brash, Labour MP for Hartlepool, you're saying this morning for the first time that you're going to vote against the government on these disability cuts. What is your message to Keir Starmer on this, and what presumably your whip and the person who deals with party discipline within Labour is going to give you a ring about this? You're presumably going to have very similar sentiments to what you've just said to me a moment ago.
Yeah, look, my view is that I would urge the government to rethink, to have a look at this again.
Do you think they will?
I sincerely hope they will. One of the things that frustrates me enormously sometimes about politics is that reassessing your position, changing your position is seen as a sign of weakness. It's not. It's a sign of strength. Looking again, change circumstances, to change position, thinking about what you're doing and whether it's the right course of action and potentially correcting that course of action is a sign of strength. Yes, you'll get political commentators who'll scream U-turn. Who cares? This is about doing the right thing. And there are people right now in my constituency and constituencies right across this country that are worried, they're scared, they're anxious, and they're potentially going to be pushed into poverty by these specific changes around personal independence payments. I think we should rethink that. But I reiterate the overall aim of the government and the Green Paper to get people back into work and the support they want to put in place.
For millions of people across Britain, politics isn't about left or right anymore. It's about who's paying attention. And right now, Reform UK seems to be the only one truly listening. Behind the scenes, the pressure finally got to Keir Starmer. As Labour MPs began to defect and the cracks in party unity widened, he made the one move he had left. He called a snap general election. But let's be clear, this wasn't some bold political strategy. It was an act of survival. His authority had been eroding for months. Whispers of a leadership challenge had grown too loud to ignore. Backed into a corner, Starmer pressed the panic button, hoping to reset the game before the board collapsed altogether. Instead, Parliament was thrown into chaos. Starmer once presented himself as the calm, capable leader who'd steady the ship after years of Conservative turbulence. But to many, he now looked like a man losing control of his own party, scrambling to hold things together as it all fell apart. His snap election call didn't inspire confidence, it reeked of desperation. The fallout was immediate. Poll numbers took another hit. Labour's internal battles spilt out into public view. Voters, already weary of Starr's policy U-turns and lack of clear direction, saw this election not as a fresh start, but as a final, frantic gamble by a leader on the ropes. Meanwhile, Reform UK continued to rise, steadily gaining ground with each passing day. This election wasn't just the start of another campaign. It was the clearest sign yet that the old political order is breaking down. Britain's future is up for grabs and the traditional parties are losing their grip. And Labour isn't alone in this crisis. The Conservatives are in free fall too. In the recent local elections, they lost over 600 seats and control of 13 councils. A disaster in any other context, overshadowed only by Labour's implosion. Now, Ken Badenoch is trying to hold together a party that's splintering at the seams. The infighting is brutal, and the public is growing more frustrated by the day. The truth, both major parties are bleeding out, and a political reckoning is coming.
This will be the first time you've rebelled or threatened to rebel Do you regret voting for the winter fuel allowance cut? Should you have rebelled on that?
It's a complicated one because I've said to you before, Peter, I absolutely agree with the principle of means testing. There's no way, for instance, my parents who are perfectly well off should be receiving a state handout with their heating bills. But as I've always said, I thought the threshold was too low. If I'm honest with you, maybe I can probably put my hand on my heart and say that maybe I shouldn't have voted for it at the time. It's something I think about most days, to be perfectly honest. What I said at the time when I voted for it, is that I thought the government needed to look very closely at the threshold and raise it significantly. It's what I believed then, it's still what I believe now.
What's happening in Westminster isn't just typical political drama. It feels like the system itself is breaking down. The old two-party model where Labour and the Conservatives took turns running the show just isn't working anymore. People are tired. Inflation keeps climbing, but wages are stuck. The NHS is stretched to the edge, crime is rising, and owning a home feels like a fantasy. And through it all, trust in the government has all but disappeared. Both Labour and the Tories keep recycling the same old promises. And people have stopped listening. Meanwhile, Reform UK is showing up with something different. Not necessarily better, but different enough to cut through the noise. And that difference, it's hitting home. This isn't just about a few by-elections or poll numbers. It's deeper than that. The country is close to a breaking point, and the loyalty that once held up the two big parties is starting to crumble. Reform UK has stepped into that space, and even they seem surprised by how much ground they're gaining. Starmer tried to be all things to all people, but in doing so, Labour started to lose its identity. The party softened its positions, blurred its messaging, and turned bold promises into vague talking points. For a while, that strategy seemed to keep things steady, but now the balancing act has fallen apart. As frustration grows across the country, Starmer appears more and more distant. He once came across as the adult in the room, calm, measured and responsible. But today, even people within his own party are wondering what he actually stands for. Some say he can't make decisions. Others think he just doesn't get it anymore. Either way, Labour voters are starting to feel like they don't recognise the party they once supported. The shift toward Reform UK didn't happen overnight. It followed months of Labour missteps, tone-deaf messaging, sudden policy reversals, and an unwillingness to face uncomfortable truths inside Labour. Support for Starmer is beginning to crack. That snap election. It wasn't a bold move. It was a distress signal. And it came too late to fix the real problem. It's not just that Starmer lacks momentum, it's that he lacks a mission.
Because I'm registered blind, they think I can't do it. They think I'm not capable. They always use the words health and safety risk every time. And I don't understand what the Chancellor wants us to do. Because if she cuts that money from us, how are we supposed to pay our bills? Employers don't want to give us a job. What are we supposed to do? Just disappear into the aether?
So are you going to be affected by these cuts?
More than likely, yeah. I've had difficulties over the last 2 weeks where they've taken away a premium I'm entitled to without giving a reason I might add. And over the last 2 weeks, I've attempted to take my life at least twice because of these things that are happening and what's going to happen to us. I won't be able to pay my mortgage. I won't be able to cover my bills. It's already hard enough. I have to pay a fortune just to get to hospital appointments. We don't choose to be born this way. We don't choose to need extra help. So why should we be punished?
Labour's troubles didn't end with defections or campaign blunders. One of the most damaging moments came from within. During a live radio panel, MP Lucy Powell sparked outrage when she appeared to downplay a Channel 4 documentary exposing abuse by grooming gangs. The backlash was swift, not just from political rivals, but from ordinary people who felt dismissed. It wasn't just what she said, it was the timing. Reform UK was already gaining ground with voters who believed mainstream parties were avoiding tough issues. Then Powell's comments seemed to confirm their fears that Labour cared more about image than impact. She later apologised, claiming she was criticising political opportunism, not the victims. But for many, the damage was already done. Voters saw it as yet another moment where Labour prioritised optics over empathy. The party's trust deficit deepened. People were already questioning Labour's commitment to justice on sensitive matters. Now they were angry. Reform UK capitalised on it immediately. Powell's apology came quickly, but critics said her remarks trivialised child exploitation and shut down honest debate. What made things worse was the party leadership's slow, vague response. When asked if Starmer supported Powell's stance, his spokesperson dodged the question. That lack of clarity didn't just frustrate people, it enraged them. It made Labour look like it was more focused on managing headlines than confronting painful truths. Ultimately, it wasn't just Powell's words that hurt. It was the party's refusal to fully face the hurt behind them. Outside the party, calls for more action are growing louder. Conservative co-chair Nigel Huddleston accused Labour of downplaying the scandal to protect councils they control, demanding a full public inquiry, calling it a moral duty, not politics. Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp agreed, saying justice must come before party image. Families of survivors like Marlon West, whose daughter's story was featured in a documentary, aren't asking for apologies. They want real change. And many doubt Labour is ready to deliver. This isn't just Labour's problem anymore. It signals a wider breakdown in the political system. From scandals to by-election shocks and defections, there's a clear gap between politicians and the public. Voters aren't just frustrated, they're fed up. Reform UK's rise shows they're ready to reject the old ways. This movement isn't about polished campaigns. It's raw emotion, disbelief that no matter who leads, nothing improves. Communities see wages stagnant, services failing, and politicians blaming each other while doing nothing. That anger is fueling Reform UK's surge. Now, with a snap election amid chaos, Labour divided, Conservatives faltering, and Reform UK rising, voters aren't just picking the lesser evil, they want something new. This election could reshape British politics for generations. What once seemed impossible is happening. The political landscape is breaking open, and this is only the beginning. If you want more honest coverage, hit subscribe and share your thoughts. Is Reform UK the future or just another protest vote?